Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel that is QPOL. My name is Anjali Mishra. Here we'll be covering different concepts of science. So student, talking about today's video, we are going to cover chapter 1 of class 10th science, which is going to be about chemical reactions and equations. So students, chemical reactions and equation में will be learning about what are chemical reaction, how we can identify that whether a chemical reaction has taken place or not, different varieties of chemical reactions, as well as we are going to learn about how we can balance a chemical equation. So moving on with the very first topic of this chapter, which is about what are chemical reactions. Students, just a small request, since we have started this chapter, make sure that you people are having a rough notebook with you, so that whenever we'll be covering important statements, you people can note it down, so that whenever you people will revise this chapter for your final exams, that would be helpful for you. So let's just start with the very first topic, that is about what are chemical reactions. So the first statement says that a chemical reaction is a process where reactants gets converted into a product which may be under an influence of a catalyst. So अगर हम एक बहुत अच्छे एग्जाम्पल की बात करें स्टूडेंट्स, हमारे पास है हाइड्रोजन विच इज़ अगेन अ गैस एंड ऑक्सीजन अ गैस. सो जब ये दोनों चीज़ें आपस में कंबाइन करेंगी, विल गेट वाटर विच हैज़ अ मॉलिक्यूलर फॉर्मूला ऑफ H2O. So इस रिएक्शन में वेयर हाइड्रोजन एंड ऑक्सीजन गैस आर गोइंग टू कंबाइन टुगेदर, हम उन्हें बुलाएंगे रिएक्टेंट्स, एंड वाटर is going to be the product. Then the last statement is which may be under an influence of a catalyst. So आइए बात करते हैं what are catalyst. हम कहेंगे catalyst are substances which are used whenever we have to increase the rate of the reaction. यानी जब भी हमें चाहिए कि रिएक्शन फटाफट फिनिश हो जाए या विद इन वेरी लेस टाइम कंप्लीट हो जाए, विल बी यूजिंग अ कैटलिस्ट. बट द क्वेश्चन इज, क्या ये कैटलिस्ट भी रिएक्शन में इन्वॉल्व होते हैं या टेक पार्ट करते हैं? द आंसर इज नो. Catalysts are just the substances which are used whenever we have to increase the rate of a chemical reaction. But these substances are not going to take part in that chemical reaction. एक बार वो chemical reaction finish हो गई, then you can reuse this catalyst for some other chemical reaction where you want to make sure that this reaction finishes within very less time. So this was about catalyst. Now students, if we talk about how we can divide chemical reactions, these are basically into two types. One is what is called as word equation, and the second one is called as symbol equation. So as the name says, word equation, that means we'll be using words to answer that what are the reactants and how they are going to combine together to form a substance which is going to be called a product. Symbol equation means, see, it's obvious that अगर बहुत सारे reactants हैं, so उनका नाम लिखना would be take more time, but it will use their symbol, that will take very less time. It's going to be time saving for us. So what scientists did is, initially they started off by using word equations, but then when they realized that it's one such thing which is taking time, they started using these symbols, and all the different elements have got specific symbols so that there should not be any confusion. And throughout the world, same symbols are being used so that kabhi bhi there should not be any confusion. Next statement says reactants are written on the left hand side with a plus sign between them. Similarly, products are written on the right hand side with a plus sign between them. So reactions variety के होते हैं. So if there is a reaction where we have hydrogen combining with oxygen to form water, Here there'll be a plus sign in between hydrogen and oxygen to show that these are the two things which are reactants and combining together to form water. But अगर हम बात करें students of one such product that is or one such substance that is calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate, when it is heated, it breaks or it decomposes to form carbon dioxide gas and calcium oxide. So in these varieties of chemical reaction, there is going to be a plus sign on the product side instead of the reactant side. And lastly, an arrowhead point towards the product and shows the direction of the reaction. Yani ki whenever there will be a chemical reaction, I'll just show you. Here we have a chemical reaction where around 3 hydrogen molecules are combining with 1 hydrogen molecule. I'm sorry, there should be 1 nitrogen. It has been written by mistake, so it will form ammonia having molecular formula NH3. So plus sign shows that these are two reactants, and arrow shows that when these two things would be combining together, they'll form the product, that is ammonia having molecular formula NH3. So students, these are the basic statements or these are the basic points that you have to remember regarding what are chemical reaction. अब students मान लेते हैं that chemical reaction has taken place, but what is the proof? On what basis can we say that okay, this reaction has actually taken place, या फिर क्या ये reaction complete हो गया है? So for that we are not going to learn about how do we identify a chemical reaction. Reactions होते तो हैं, but identify कैसे करना है उसके बारे में now we are going to learn. So the first statement says that a chemical reaction is identified by any of these 4 factors. Number 1, change in state. Number 2, change in color. Number 3, evolution of a gas. And number 4, change in temperature. So students, whenever there'll be any of these changes observed, starting with change in state, then change in color, evolution of a gas, and lastly change in temperature, will say that a chemical reaction has taken place. Now if we talk about one such chemical reaction जहाँ पर there is change in state, when very good example of this would be hydrogen combining with oxygen to form water. So here hydrogen is a gas, again oxygen is also a gas, but when both of them will combine together, they will form water, which is in liquid state. So this shows that since there is change in state, this is one very good example of a chemical reaction. उसके बाद if we talk about how to identify change in color, so one very good example is if you will have, let's just say, or let's just take around 100 ml of water in a beaker, and to that try and add at least 2 to 3 drops of potassium permanganate crystals which are like bluish in color. So as soon as this potassium permanganate crystals will get added with water, they'll show change in color. Therefore a reaction has been completed. Next one is evolution of a gas, and the last one is change in temperature. So for both the statements now we'll be using one reaction, and that is when calcium carbonate is heated. On heating there will be change in temperature, and then once calcium carbonate will break down or once calcium carbonate will decompose, it is going to form calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. So when there will be production of carbon dioxide gas, this shows that yes, this is a chemical reaction, and now this chemical reaction has taken place. So these are the 4 extremely important statements regarding how we can identify change in a chemical reaction. Students, आप ये सारे statements note down कर लीजिएगा, because you people might would get a question asking you about name 4 factors with the help of which we can identify that whether a reaction has taken place or not. Next statement is, according to law of conservation of mass, matter can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. So, matter in class 9, you people might would have already studied that matter is something, or matter is any substance that has mass and it occupies some amount of space, and it can be in 3 different states: solid, liquid and gases. So they are trying to say that whenever there will be a chemical reaction, mass of that substance is not going to get destroyed, and it will not even be created. The amount of reactants that you'll be using, you'll get the same amount of product. For example, if we have let's just say if we have hydrogen reacting with oxygen to form water, so 1 atom of hydrogen is being used. Like, we always have to check for the big numbers which are there in the front of these elements or compounds. So no numbers in front of hydrogen and oxygen and water, so we'll assume it to be 1. So we'll say that when 1 molecule of hydrogen is being added with just 1 molecule of oxygen, it forms 1 compound of water. So mass is not being created. It's like, we can say, it's neither being created nor being destroyed. It just changes from one form to the other. Initially it was like in gaseous state, and once the reaction has been completed, it has now turned into liquid state. That's it. Now let's talk about how we can write a chemical reaction. So the statement says a chemical equation represents a chemical reaction. So whenever we have to represent that what was there in the chemical reaction, mentioning all the things that one molecule of hydrogen combined with 1 molecule of oxygen eventually formed 1 compound of water, will take a lot of time. So the shorthand method is, we can represent these chemical reactions with the help of chemical equations. So if we can recall the formula of magnesium and oxygen and magnesium oxide, we can mention that what happens when magnesium combines with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. So for this, students, you have to learn formulas of all the elements which are given in the periodic table. So that is how you'll be able to show that, okay, this much amount of atom was being used on the reactant side, and that is the amount of product that we got. So talking about this particular reaction, we had magnesium combining with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. Just a very good example of a chemical equation representing what happened within a chemical reaction. Then if we talk about one more example, we can say that when carbon combines with oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide gas. So writing this whole thing would take a lot of time. So we'll write it as carbon combining with oxygen to form carbon dioxide gas. That's it. That's the only thing that you people have to do, and that's it. So this was about how we can write what has happened in a chemical equation, or what has happened in a chemical reaction with the help of a chemical equation. Now comes the most important topic, which is about balancing a chemical equation. So we have got a lot of statements regarding this topic. And students, this is actually going to be the last topic of this video, so that once we'll cover this section, from the next video onwards, we'll be talking about different varieties of chemical reaction. So starting with the very first topic, it's like to balance a chemical equation. First, draw boxes around each formula. Do not change anything inside the boxes while balancing the equation. List the number of atoms of different elements which are present in an unbalanced equation. So students, here I am going to write one simple equation, that is N2 plus H2 makes 2NH3, and we are going to balance this equation. Like, I'm not going to read out all the statements one by one. Pehle we'll just discuss that how we can balance this equation, what are the protocols that we have to follow while we are balancing these equations, and then I'll just read out all the statements. So jabhi bhi you will get any chemical equation, rule number 1 is make sure that what are the reactants, what are the products, make a list out of them. Like, this thing might not be there in your book, so if you people want, you can note it down. Whenever you people are getting any chemical equation, make sure make sure that you people are counting how many variety of atoms are there on the reactant as well as on the product side. So talking about this chemical equation, we have nitrogen and hydrogen on the reactant side, and the same thing is there on the product side. So we'll write it as nitrogen and hydrogen on the reactant as well as on the product side. Now let's just count the total number of atoms. So for that we have to add on two things. First, we have to check that how much number, like basically we have to check that whether any big number is being attached in front of these elements or not. And also remember that sign says that whenever there are no numbers in front of any element or a compound, that is definitely going to be 1. So nitrogen and hydrogen don't have any big numbers in front of them, therefore it's 1. And then we have to multiply that 1 with the number which is attached to the bottom portion. So 1 multiplied by 2 gives a value of 2. So we'll say that on the reactant side we have 2 nitrogen and 2 hydrogen atom. Moving on to the product side, again we have to check for the number that is given in the front part and the number that is given in the bottom. So talking about NH3, we have 2 in front of NH. That means it will apply for both nitrogen and hydrogen. But if we talk about whether there are any numbers being attached to the bottom of nitrogen and hydrogen, so the answer would be nitrogen doesn't has any number attached to its bottom, but with hydrogen we have 3. So again we have to multiply things. We'll say that the number of nitrogen atom on the product side would be 2, which is again equal to the number of nitrogen atom which were there on the reactant side. Talking about hydrogen, 2 multiplied by 3 gives a value of 6. So this shows that on the product side we have 6 hydrogen atom, but on the reactant side we just have 2 hydrogen atom. So now we have to balance this reaction in one such way so that nitrogen atom still remain untouched, because both of them are equally balanced. It's just that we have to increase the number of hydrogen atom on the reactant side. So we always have to start from small numbers. If we will add 1 in front of hydrogen, that is not going to make any difference. 2 will give a value of 4. again it's going to be less than 6. But soon if I'll place a 3 in front of hydrogen, this gives a value of 6, and this shows that now the number of nitrogen and hydrogen atom on the reactants as well as on the product side are equal. Therefore now this reaction is balanced. So this is the protocol that you people have to follow. Now I'm just going to read out all the statements so that you people could note it down. And students, you have to make sure that you try and balance as many reactions as possible so that आपका practice would be very good in terms of balancing reactions. Next statement says start balancing with the compounds that contain maximum number of atoms. It can be a reactant or a product. In that we can like if there is a compound, we can simply select what variety of elements are there and which one has the maximum number of atoms. Balance the unbalanced atom and finally check the correctness of the balanced equation that count atoms of each element on both the sides of the reaction. So here initially when hydrogen combines with oxygen, it forms 2H2O, but once we'll start balancing the equation, we'll get to know that having a 2H2 on the product side gives the total number of hydrogen, that is 4, but we need the same number of hydrogen atom on the reactant side as well. So we'll just place a 2. So that's how we'll get same number of hydrogen and oxygen atom on both the sides of the reaction, and this will create a balanced chemical equation. Students, lastly we have to learn that while we are representing chemical equation, we have to place or we have to mention that if we are using this particular element, this is going to be in what state. If it is there in solid state, it will be represented by small s. Liquid state is small l. Same goes with gas, small g. And lastly AQ means aqueous solution. So talking about what are aqueous solutions, students, all those solutions where water is being used as a solvent. I'm not talking about solute. All those all those solutions where water is being used as a solvent, these solutions are called as aqueous solution. So students, this was it about today's session. In your next session we will be discussing some more reactions so that we'll have a good command on balancing chemical equation, and then we will be talking about variety of chemical reaction and the rest other things which are there within this chapter. So this was it for today's session. I hope this session would have been helpful for you.